Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today we've got the reworked Saboteur Ascendancy for the Blight League for 3.8, and the Saboteur has had an interesting mix of changes. Where the Necromancer looks like an entirely new Ascendancy, unrecognisable compared to what existed in 3.7 and earlier, the Saboteur looks very recognisable. All the same nodes are there, although some of them have been changed. Some have been tweaked and some have been thoroughly reworked. The biggest change, though, with the Saboteur Ascendancy is actually not the nodes on it, but the changes that are happening to mine skills in particular. Mines are being utterly transformed in 3.8 Blight League. So even though the changes to the Ascendancy may not seem transformative, I expect that the play style will feel unrecognisable for people that have played Saboteurs in the past. So in the past, mines and traps have been ways to essentially bypass the cast time of some of the spells that do a lot of damage but that have a high cast time. Good examples: Glacial Cascade, Bladefall, Arc. All of these are skills with quite a lot of damage and that have a pretty unpleasantly long cast time. Mines, however, disregard the cast time of the gem, and so your time that it takes to set an arc mine under the old system or to throw a bundle of arc traps is determined by your skills related to traps, not at all influenced by the cast time of arc. Now, mines seem to be keeping this sort of alternate way of scaling, of indirectly scaling cast speed, but everything else about them is changing. So, let's have a quick look through the various nodes that exist, starting with Born in the Shadows, which is completely unchanged. Now, Born in the Shadows is a very, very, very good node. It's one of the best defensive all-around nodes that exists in the entire game. You should definitely default to taking this node. It is too good, I think, to consider a Saboteur tree that does not take Born in the Shadows at some point. I would typically recommend that you take this as either your Merciless or your Eternal Labyrinth Ascendancy, however, because if you're a trap specialist, you're going to want your first 4 points going towards chain reaction, and if you're a mine specialist, you probably want to go down the mine wing first. So next up, so basically take Born in the Shadows. Like, Cannot Be Blinded is a rubbish line, but 10% reduced damage taken from blinded enemies is significant when combined with the rest of the node. Nearby enemies are blinded is incredible. That significantly increases your chance to be missed in combat. And you got a chance to blind enemies on hit. Nearby enemies are blinded. This is just amazing. Plus, you're also getting damage with it as well. Your first hit won't necessarily get this 30% increased damage, but your subsequent hits will pretty quickly get it against tougher enemies. So if the enemy's weak, you'll one-shot it anyway, and if the enemy is strong, then you'll blind it first, and then it'll take more damage when you need it to take more damage. So yeah, Born in the Shadows, excellent node, always take it. Next up, we have the section that is dedicated to mines. Now, this has been overhauled. Demolition Specialist is unrecognisable compared to what it used to be, whereas Bomb Specialist is something that is changed but is still recognisably the same node that it was in the past. Of note, you are getting trap damage along here, and it is sometimes something people do. Is you're playing a build that is a mine specialist, but that also throws some traps. I know that the last time that I played Glacial Cascade Mines, which I believe might have been in 3.1 Abyss League, although I'm not sure of that. The time that I played them, I was using traps to trigger Frostbomb. Frostbomb for the I think it's now an exposure, but back then it was just a straight reduced cold resistance. Very powerful effect that you could get there just by virtue of throwing the Frostbomb as a trap, and then that would, you'd have your extra bonuses to it. So yeah, do keep in mind you are getting trap damage here. However, you're taking these nodes for the mine specialties, and your bomb specialist node, you gain 4% increased area of effect for each mine. Now this looks at first to be a nerf from its previous 8%. However, I think that with the changes that are happening to mines, actually this is a buff. you will have more than twice as many mines out, typically, as you had in the previous leagues. 4% increased area of effect area of effect doesn't scale very well, but ultimately this is still something that is useful. 20% increased mine throwing speed if you have detonated mines recently. This is a great line. Like the times that you need the most damage and are the times that you're fighting something really tough. And when you're fighting something really tough, you know what you're doing? You're detonating mines all the time. So this is 20% increased mine throwing speed when you need it, but no buff to mine speed when you don't really need it. 40% increased damage if you have detonated mines recently. This should apply to basically every mine that you set off, so that should be excellent. And yeah, mines have increased detonation speed. Now this one has me perplexed. I was under the impression that mines detonated, or that detonate mines is instant now. So I need to seek some clarification on that. I'm not sure of the exact mechanics of mine detonation other than the chain reaction side of things that was demonstrated. If you've seen either Grunniger Games' video of the new mine skills that was released last week, or my video where I did some commentary on it, that's something that may be worth having another look through. But I was under the impression detonate mines, the skill was instant, so we'll have to see what happens there. Maybe there's a difference between casting the spell detonate mines that's provided to you by a skill gem and the default detonate mines ability that you have. Now, going further along from Bomb Specialist. So Bomb Specialist is good, you should take it, and I think if you're going to be a mine-based character, I might take this as your normal Labyrinth, and then Demolition Specialist as your Cruel, and then go and get 2 more nodes after that with your Merciless and Eternal. However, if you're playing in Hardcore, you probably want to go with the defensive options first. So Demolition Specialist, 100% increased effect of auras from mines. Part of the mine overhaul is that enemies that are close to a mine suffer some sort of debuff from the aura that the mine puts out. That persists until the mines are actually detonated. Now, if you are absolutely vomiting out an enormous amount of mines in a fight, you can expect that the first ones that go off, the enemies will be in a lot of auras when that happens. So that'll be really strong. And 100% increased effective auras. We need to see numbers on these, on the mines auras, but I think that sounds like an incredibly strong node. Additionally, mines hinder enemies near them for 2 seconds when they land, reducing movement speed by 40%. Now, having played trap builds in the past, I think current traps are probably closer to what mines are going to be in 3.8 and going forward than anything else is. That ability would have been absolutely incredible. The time that I was playing with Arc Traps in the Betrayal League, it would have been absolutely amazing. So yeah, I think this Demolition Specialist looks like a really important node, and I would say that yeah, if your character is around mines, you need to take this node. Now, we're going to have a quick look at 7 and 8 here is the Pyromaniac side of things. This node has been nerfed. It kind of needed it. It was one of the best defensive nodes in the entire game. And the Saboteur had Born in the Shadows and Pyromaniac, both providing incredible defenses. Even despite the fact that it's been nerfed, this is still a defensive powerhouse and mandatory to take, I believe, on any Saboteur build. So, you're immune to Ignite and Shock. That doesn't sound like much, but it is 2 flask affixes that you don't need to worry about. Now, you might have just decided that you were going to ignore ignites and just tank them, which is a valid option. Shock, generally speaking, people often want to have some sort of immunity to, because shocks can very quickly kill you in some fights. In any case, the Pyromaniac means that you don't need to worry about being ignited or shocked ever. Recover 1% of life per second, or regenerate 1% of life per second for each mine or trap detonated or triggered recently, up to 10% for each per second. This is incredibly strong. And in terms of the way that mines play, I think actually this is going to be stronger on a 3.8 miner than it was on a 3.7 miner, because in 3.7 you probably wouldn't get more than about 7 stacks of this regeneration in normal gameplay. However, on a 3.8 miner, I think it's going to be pretty common for you to max this out. It's definitely a nerf for the trap side of things, but 10% regen per second is absolutely nothing to laugh at, and it should be really, really strong. Now, the reduced mana cost of skills that throw traps and reduced mana reservation of skills that throw mines, these are also just incredibly powerful, and this is a node that you would take for its defensive capabilities alone, but it is also helping address mana issues. A quick side note here is that traps and mines in 3.7 meta, they're generally very, very, very taxing on mana. Most players have had an approach of using Mind Over Matter in conjunction with a large mana pool and a Lavinia's Spirit unique flask, or the Vile Clarity skill. Unfortunately, these strategies are no longer going to work for mines, and I think you're going to need to invest fairly heavily in mana regeneration gear. This is going to... I'll have to reassess this when we actually see the numbers on how much mana is reserved by these skills, but I think in general you are no longer going to want to even consider Mind Over Matter on a build that is throwing mines. That said, you're going to want a large mana pool probably, and a fair amount of unreserved mana will be needed, I think, for most mine-based characters, and you will probably need to use a mana flask, maybe even an instant one. We'll have to look at that, but Pyromaniac will certainly help you there. So the summary on Pyromaniac is take it. It's one of the best nodes in the game. Despite the fact that it's been nerfed, it's still ridiculously good. You need to take it. Now, we have the Trap Cluster, which is Perfect Crime and Chain Reaction. So, just having a quick look here, absolutely nothing has been changed in these nodes. And they already were must-haves. If you were a trapper, nothing has changed there either. If you're building a trap specialist Saboteur, you need to take these nodes. So firstly, there is Perfect Crime. It gives you increased damage for each trap that's out, 20% chance for traps to trigger an additional time. In practice, this is just generally a 20% more damage multiplier for your skills that are being used against high hit point enemies. Against enemies that you don't need extra damage on, it doesn't do anything, and it may not be a 20% more multiplier, but against the ones that you actually care about killing, it does. So yeah, very, very solid node there. And yeah, you know, there's just cooldown recovery speed for throwing traps is great, especially with the traps like Lightning Spire Trap that have a very high impact but have a long cooldown on them. Next up we have Chain Reaction, and Chain Reaction is the thing that makes trappers feel smooth. When your traps trigger, your nearby traps also trigger. Just focus on that line for a second because it's the big one. When your traps trigger, your nearby traps also trigger. This means that you can drop traps everywhere around enemies, and you don't need to rely upon upon an enemy standing on each individual trap. You just need them to stand on one of them, and then boom, the enemy is probably deleted. So yeah, Chain Reaction, very, very strong, and it has other text as well. You know, you would take it as a 4-point node just for that last line, but it has other text as well. Trap damage, cooldown recovery speed, again, cooldown recovery speed is excellent, and skills used by traps have increased area of effect. So, with all of that in mind, we now get to Explosives Expert, and unfortunately, this node's been changed a little bit. For some builds, it'll be a bit better than it was. For other builds, it'll be a bit worse than it was. But that's not relevant because you're not going to take it. You're going to take the other options instead. Unfortunately, Explosives Expert is just crunched out as objectively the least powerful node on the tree. You need to take Born in the Shadows. You need to take Pyromaniac. These are non-negotiable. They're incredibly powerful nodes. You then take 4 points in your specialty, whether that be a trapper or a miner, and then you don't have any space left for Explosives Expert, even if it was quite a bit better than it is. There's nothing wrong with this node, it's fairly solid, but unfortunately it just doesn't do what the Saboteur needs. So, act like it doesn't exist is my suggestion. It would need to have considerably higher numbers to compel me to even contemplate dropping Born in the Shadows or Pyromaniac in order to take it. So, in terms of the Saboteur, what I would suggest you do if you want to play one, give the new mind skills a shot first. But if you find that they're not to your liking, or if they're just terrible, which is entirely possible, some of the overhauls have fallen flat, like the Guardians sort of holy minions theme that was introduced in Delve. It wasn't a terrible overhaul, but it just didn't hit any home runs. If the new minds are like that, then no disaster really. All you need to do is respec out of the Demolition Specialist, Bomb Specialist side, pick up Chain Reaction, and your Saboteur is good to go with traps. So that's my suggestion for you. Start out with the mines, take Born in the Shadows, take Pyromaniac, and take Demolition Specialist. Do it in whatever order you prefer. If you want to be tanky early, then pick up Born in the Shadows first. If you want to be dealing more damage early, then pick up Demolition Specialist, and then just pick up Pyromaniac at a point later on in your progression. I would probably take. I mean, I'm a softcore player, so I would take the damage first. But if you're a hardcore player, definitely take the defenses first. And yeah, you're set up. If you've got any questions, definitely fire away below. Otherwise, I hope you have a good one.